A criminal investigation has been opened against the sitting chair of the United States Federal Reserve. Officially, the matter centers on a budget overrun connected to a building renovation project. On the surface, the case appears administrative in nature, framed as a procedural review of costs and oversight. The allegation is narrow, technical, and limited in scope. Yet the timing and context of the investigation have raised questions that extend beyond the stated issue. The investigation does not emerge in isolation. It unfolds during a period of heightened financial strain, elevated interest rates, and growing political sensitivity around monetary policy. The Federal Reserve occupies a unique position within the American system, formally independent yet deeply influential over government financing conditions. Decisions taken by its leadership directly affect borrowing costs, debt servicing, and the broader economic environment. Within this context, the investigation is presented not merely as an inquiry into expenditures, but as a potential instrument of pressure. The argument advanced is that the stated justification functions as a cover, concealing a more strategic objective. Rather than focusing on accountability for construction costs, the investigation is interpreted as a means of creating leverage over monetary policy leadership. This interpretation rests on the assumption that the true point of friction is not a renovation budget, but interest rates. Monetary policy has remained restrictive, and those conditions have consequences for government finances. The investigation therefore becomes relevant not for what it claims to examine, but for the influence it may exert. By placing the Federal Reserve Chair under legal scrutiny, political actors gain a tool that can be used to shape expectations and behavior. The significance of this pressure lies in its indirect nature. No explicit demand is made. No formal instruction is issued. Instead, the presence of an investigation alters the balance of power. It introduces vulnerability into a position designed to be insulated from short-term political considerations. In doing so, it raises concerns about the boundary between legal process and policy influence. According to the argument presented, this development marks the opening move in a broader sequence. The investigation establishes the setting in which monetary decisions are no longer evaluated solely on economic grounds. Instead, they are influenced by external constraints that have little to do with inflation, employment, or financial stability. This framing sets the stage for understanding subsequent claims about government incentives, debt dynamics, and the implications for financial markets. The central argument that develops from this investigation rests on a specific premise: the structural dependence of the United States government on low interest rates. According to this view, fiscal policy and the scale of indebtedness have created a relationship in which the cost of money becomes a decisive factor for state financial stability. When rates remain high, that structure immediately comes under strain. The narrative holds that the government has become dependent on cheap financing. This dependence is not described as a temporary preference, but as a condition developed over time. The accumulation of debt requires constant refinancing, and every additional percentage point in interest rates directly increases debt servicing costs. In this environment, restrictive monetary policy ceases to be a technical matter and becomes a political problem. From this perspective, the investigation against the Federal Reserve Chair serves a concrete function: creating leverage. It is not framed as a mechanism to remove the chair immediately, but as a way to weaken his negotiating position. Under legal and political pressure, the practical independence of the institution is compromised, even if its formal independence remains intact. The concept of leverage is central to this reasoning. By introducing personal and institutional risk for the leadership of the Federal Reserve, the environment in which interest rate decisions are made is altered. The implicit message does not need to be expressed openly. The mere existence of the investigation redefines incentives and reduces the policymaker's room to maneuver. This approach assumes that the ultimate objective is not to punish budget mismanagement, but to influence the trajectory of interest rates. The pressure is oriented toward a specific outcome: gradual rate cuts that ease the government's financing burden. Within this framework, the investigation acts as an indirect instrument to align monetary policy with fiscal needs. Thus, the issue ceases to be legal and becomes strategic. The debate is no longer about a construction project, but about control over the price of money. This logic establishes the link between the investigation and future rate decisions, preparing the ground for understanding why debt occupies a central place in the analysis. The core fiscal problem highlighted is the size and structure of U.S. government debt. A substantial portion of that debt is not long-term, but matures at relatively short intervals. Approximately 1/4 of the total must be refinanced within the next 12 months. This fact introduces an urgency that directly constrains monetary policy. Constant refinancing creates what is described as a treadmill. Each maturity forces the government to issue new debt to pay off the old. When interest rates are low, this process is manageable. When rates are high, the cost of replacing old debt with new debt rises sharply. The problem is not limited to principal, but to the interest attached to each new issuance. In this context, the government faces a clear dilemma. It can accept market conditions and refinance at higher rates, absorbing a significant increase in interest expense. Or it can attempt to alter those conditions by influencing monetary policy to reduce rates before refinancing reaches its critical point. This second option gives meaning to the pressure described earlier. The temporal structure of the debt makes Federal Reserve decisions an immediate factor rather than a theoretical one. Every delay in cutting rates translates into billions of dollars in additional financial costs. Monetary policy ceases to be merely an inflation control tool and becomes a central component of fiscal sustainability. The analysis emphasizes that this situation is not temporary. As long as debt levels remain high and maturities are concentrated in the short term, refinancing pressure will persist. The incentive to push rates lower does not disappear. It intensifies as maturities approach and costs materialize. Within this scenario, the concept of negative real interest rates is introduced as a key consequence of rate cuts in an environment of persistent inflation. The real rate is defined as the difference between nominal interest rates and inflation. When inflation remains elevated and nominal rates begin to fall, that difference can turn negative. Negative real rates have direct implications for holders of cash and bonds. In real terms, purchasing power erodes over time. Nominal yields no longer compensate for inflation losses. Under such conditions, holding traditional financial instruments becomes less attractive. The analysis argues that this environment has historically favored precious metals. When real rates are negative, the opportunity cost of holding non-yielding assets such as gold and silver declines. These assets do not need to pay interest. Their appeal lies in their ability to preserve value against monetary erosion. Rate cuts are therefore not evaluated in isolation. Their impact depends on their relationship to inflation. If inflation remains persistent and cuts are implemented to relieve fiscal or economic pressure, the result is an environment in which real yields deteriorate, reshaping investor preferences. The argument does not suggest an immediate reaction, but a process. As real rates move deeper into negative territory, capital begins to seek alternative stores of value. Precious metals benefit from this shift, not because of growth expectations, but because of their role as protection. Thus, the link between monetary policy and metals becomes structural. It does not depend on a single event, but on the prolonged interaction between inflation and interest rates. This interaction explains why changes in Federal Reserve policy extend beyond bond markets and into gold and silver. The analysis presents gold and silver not merely as financial assets, but as instruments of protection against a system based on constant debt expansion. In this view, precious metals function as a systemic hedge, responding when internal tensions within the financial system become visible. Debt expansion requires supportive monetary conditions to be sustained. Low rates, abundant liquidity, and continuous refinancing are essential to maintaining equilibrium. When any of these elements is strained, the system begins to show stress. It is at that point that gold and silver become relevant. The argument does not assign a speculative role to metals. Their value does not derive from promised future income, but from their existence outside the debt system. They do not depend on an issuer's obligation or an institution's solvency, which distinguishes them from most financial assets. In an environment where monetary policy is adjusted to sustain indebtedness, metals benefit indirectly. The need to lower rates to relieve fiscal pressure reinforces the conditions that have historically favored these assets. Gold and silver thrive when the system requires constant stimulus to remain functional. The concept of systemic hedging implies that their performance is tied to the health of the overall financial framework, not to isolated indicators. When the system is strengthened through fiscal discipline and positive real rates, their appeal diminishes. When it relies on growing debt and negative real rates, their protective function becomes central. The analysis distinguishes clearly between gold and silver based on their respective roles. Gold is defined as the reserve metal. It reflects shifts in confidence and stability, and tends to react first when systemic stress emerges. Its behavior is relatively predictable and closely linked to perceptions of risk. Silver, by contrast, is presented as the wildcard metal. Its response can be delayed, but its potential volatility is greater. Initially, it may lag gold, but when negative real rates and systemic pressure intensify, its price movement can accelerate sharply. This distinction suggests that gold and silver should be evaluated as complementary assets. Gold acts as an early indicator of stress, while silver can offer amplified responses once conditions are confirmed. The month of May gains political relevance in this analysis because it coincides with the end of the Federal Reserve Chair's term. This period represents a critical window in which strategic monetary decisions can be made and institutional direction adjusted. The investigation functions as a pressure tool ahead of this expiration. Its existence introduces uncertainty around leadership stability and policy continuity. The proximity of the mandate's end makes any form of pressure more consequential. In this context, a rate cut appears more likely during the leadership transition. Signals of policy flexibility could shape expectations for the incoming chair and influence asset behavior, including precious metals. Political pressure on the Federal Reserve has direct implications for institutional credibility. A Fed perceived as vulnerable to external influence loses authority in the eyes of global markets. Credibility is a cornerstone of confidence in the U.S. dollar. If perceived independence erodes, global demand for dollar-denominated assets may weaken. This can translate into higher yields demanded by investors and increased financing costs for the government. A feedback loop emerges. Pressure for rate cuts weakens credibility, which raises required bond yields, which in turn increases fiscal strain and reinforces the push for monetary easing. Within this loop, a weaker dollar reflects diminished confidence and expectations of lower rates. Currency depreciation contributes to imported inflation and heightens systemic risk perception. In this environment, precious metals gain prominence as stores of value. The analysis highlights a global trend alongside U.S. dynamics, active gold accumulation by central banks. This behavior reflects a gradual erosion of confidence in the dollar, even as it retains reserve currency status. Countries such as Serbia have increased gold reserves as part of broader financial strengthening strategies. This trend is widespread, spanning multiple regions, and reflecting a common desire for monetary protection. Central banks accumulate gold as a means of preserving value and stability. Unlike fiat currencies, gold is politically neutral and universally recognized. This makes it a preferred hedge against systemic and geopolitical risk. In addition to purchasing gold, many central banks are repatriating existing reserves. Countries including India, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, and Germany have moved to bring gold back under domestic control, ensuring immediate access and reducing reliance on external custodians. This combination of accumulation and repatriation signals a deliberate strategy to safeguard reserves amid monetary uncertainty. Gold's role as a universal non-political reserve asset is emphasized. No other fiat currency offers comparable liquidity, acceptance, and neutrality. As confidence in the dollar fluctuates, gold fills the gap as the primary alternative. Gold prices have reached record levels, approaching $4,643 per ounce, with projections exceeding $5,000. This movement is attributed not to speculation, but to structural policy choices and global reserve management. The analysis concludes by projecting the likely outcome of this interconnected scenario. The investigation will continue to function as leverage as the chair's term approaches its end. A leadership transition is expected to usher in gradual rate cuts. These cuts, combined with persistent inflation and heavy refinancing needs, are likely to generate negative real rates. In this environment, gold and silver benefit structurally. As long as high debt, fiscal pressure, and reliance on accommodative monetary policy persist, precious metals are positioned as consistent beneficiaries. They reflect not a temporary reaction, but a structural response to the evolving dynamics of the global financial system.